Hi, seniors. Mr. Chocolate here with today's Life After Hersey's senior session. Today's topic is academics. What will be different between high school and college? Now, it may seem pretty basic, probably have the general idea of what will be different, but we're going to dive really quickly into a little bit more specific differences and maybe what you can do to help ease that transition academically. All right, so let's get into some of the academic differences between high school and college and what you can expect. Now, again, your initial reaction may be, it's still school. Like, what's the difference? How could it be that different? But the transition from high school to college can be a shock for some students, and that new environment in itself can be one that creates new challenges. So, what can be so different? Well, I'm going to break it down into 5 different areas: classes, teachers, tests, grades, and that personal freedom, which again could be one of the most exciting parts about going to college, but it could also be one of the scariest and the part that can really throw students off the path to success. So classes, all right. In high school, of course, you are recommended for classes by your teacher or your counselor. Your parent verifies the schedule. There's only so many choices, right? You might meet daily, or now with our block schedule, every other day for 70, 80 minutes, 90 minutes, however part of high school you started, and where we're at currently. Your class size, though, is going to be about 30, right? It's not going to be too much less, not too much more. Of course, academic classes we're talking about, not PE or something like that. You're given a textbook maybe, or for sure an iPad, and you're going to use that, and that's where your materials will be. And then the graduation requirements are basically going to be the same for everyone. You need a certain number of credits. You need a certain number of years of English, math, science, social studies, personal finance, all that kind of stuff. Not too much difference between the transcript, how it looks. Of course, now in college, you get to register for your own classes online. You're going to have a specific date and time when you can start. You usually have to make an appointment if you want to talk to your academic advisor and even know what you have to pick. So you might get those classes for your first semester or two at freshman orientation, but after that, it's going to be totally up to you to reach out and figure out what you need to take. Your classes, instead of meeting every other day, let's say in the block schedule, could meet every single day, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. It could depend. It could be for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 16 weeks, depending on how your school is set up. Your classes could range in size from 10 students up to 500 or more, depending on the style of the class. You have to put extra money into your books and in buying a computer or tablet or things like that. And then, of course, the graduation requirements are going to be different no matter what, depending on what you study. So your schedule could look very different from someone else's. So you're going to have the sample schedule, and we're going to talk more about this in our other session on time management and organization. But just to kind of give you a little preview, your schedule right now, Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 3 is going to be basically filled with school for the most part, unless you have an early release or late start or something like that. But in college, again, your schedule can be all over the place. You might have work right in the middle of the day. You might not even plan for study time right now, but you might want to write that in. Your lunch is built into your high school schedule. It's not necessarily built into your college schedule. So when are you going to do all of these different things? So if you want to pause a second and look at this and see, are there some strengths? Are there some things that need to be fixed? Or you can look for the time management and organization in college session for some more in-depth on that. Teachers. Okay, right now your teachers in high school, they all have a degree in teaching, a professional license through the state to be a professional educator. Many of them have advanced degrees in education, either in teaching or curriculum or something like that. Where in college, your professor is going to be an expert in that field. So if they're the marketing professor, they're going to really know marketing. If they're the art history teacher, they're really going to know art history. How well they teach that could be different. They may not have a background in teaching, and they probably have taken some training, and they're observed and things like that. But it's going to be a little bit different on how much time they've spent crafting their teaching skill versus their content area. So they might be really brilliant at teaching you calculus, but you might find varying degrees of the ability to actually explain it to someone else. Of course, in high school, you're reminded of your assignments and deadlines daily. It's probably written on the board or posted on Schoology. But in college, they might give you the syllabus and say, here you go. This is what we have. Make sure it's in by the due date. And you're responsible for keeping track of that. In high school, they might give you time in class to work on assignments. If you missed work, make up work if you're absent on a field trip, something. But in college, the class is going to go on, right? And if you missed notes, you might have to get it from a friend or something like that. And they might say, hey, you knew this was coming up. You should have reached out. Teachers, definitely big thing in difference is they're going to call your parents or email your parents if you're struggling or misbehaving or anything. In college, they can't talk to your parents. So they're going to hopefully reach out to you maybe, but they might just say, look, come find me during office hours if you have questions. That's about it. And teachers, of course, take attendance and tardies and all that kind of stuff, and they track it. And if you're off on any of those, the dean comes and talks to you. In college, they may not even check attendance. They may not even see if you're there or not. And so it's really going to be up to you to be responsible to come into class and to talk to the teacher on your own. All right, so studying is another area that's going to be a little bit different. Maybe you were the type of student in high school who didn't even need to study. Maybe with all the class time you had or review sessions and things like that, you were good to go. And so you didn't really need to do a whole lot of extra studying. But in college, the rule is generally you should study for 2 hours outside of class for every hour you're in class. So if your class meets 3 hours a week, you should plan on 6 hours of studying. Sounds like a lot, but keep in mind that you may not cover everything in class, in the lecture. There might be some additional stuff you need to learn on your own. And the professor is just there to kind of reinforce a few things or clarify things. And you might be really doing a lot of self-teaching. So again, you may not get a lot of time in class to do group work or things like that. So you might have to make plans to meet with your group mates if it's a group project outside of class. And in high school, usually you're given most of the information right there in class that you're going to need for the test. And that might not be the case in college. You might have to do a lot of reading on your own, a lot of supplemental work to make sure you have everything you need for the test. Grades are something else that's definitely different in from high school to college. So in high school, you might have a lot of frequent assignments, quizzes, chapter tests, things like that. Maybe your bigger project is broken down into smaller sections that you're graded on. That may not be the case in college. Your class may have 1 or 2 tests or 1 or 2 papers that cover everything. Midterm 30%, final 30%, and they're pretty high stakes. So you would definitely want to make sure that you are prepared in those cases. In high school, you may be able to make up a test or redo a test or redo a paper if you make a mistake. College, it might be that's it, one and done. You had all the requirements, the rubric, and you got what you got. High school may have extra credit. Sometimes college doesn't. In high school, as long as you pass the class with a D, while it's not great for your transcript, it nonetheless passes the class. In college, a lot of courses, especially if they're part of your major or towards a graduation requirement, simply getting a D isn't going to cut it. You're going to need at least a C or C minus, depending on the school. And there might be a certain group of courses that need to average, C or higher. So you might pass every class. I know when I worked as an academic advisor at DePaul, there was a core group of courses you needed to take before you could declare your major. And even if you got straight C minuses, that would be lower than a 2.0. You couldn't even declare your major. So you got to be really aware of what grades you need and what combination of grades. And then again, in high school, your parents can log in to Infinite Campus. They can track your progress. They get report cards. They can go to parent-teacher conferences, talk to the teacher about what you're doing. That doesn't happen in college. Like, you can access your grades and see how you're doing, but parents cannot contact your professor for any of that. So you have to be on top of things. And then when you have questions or concerns, you need to reach out to your professor. And then lastly, one of the most exciting things for students is to have those personal freedoms, right? Because right now in high school, you got this set schedule every day. Bells tell you when to get up and go and when you have to get back from lunch. And if you skip anything, there can be detentions or loss of privileges. And in college, there's no bell schedule. Typically, there's you're responsible for being where you need to be when you need to be there. In high school, your parents might do a lot for you. And hopefully, if any parents are watching this, if some of these things that you do all the time are something your students don't know how to do on their own, learn these things. Students ask, like, how do I make food? How do I do my laundry? What are some important phone numbers? How do I make a phone call and set up an appointment? Because you're going to be responsible for those things, students, when you get to college. You're going to have to make sure you eat properly and eat enough meals, get sleep, do your laundry, maybe clean the bathroom, all that fun stuff that comes with adulting, right? So again, we have to enroll you here at Hersey. We're obligated to teach you and support you. Colleges are not. So if you are not following any of these requirements, that you sign on for, ditching class even, you can't just because you're paying for the college classes, if you are failing and not going to class, they can remove you from class. So you have to really be aware of that. Make sure you're paying attention. And so again, you don't need any parent permission to do things like you do now. So that can be good or bad. But parents cannot be involved with FERPA laws and can't be notified of things that are going on. So with those personal freedoms, hopefully you have the responsibility, and hopefully you keep your parents in the loop too, though. It is important to still keep them in the loop because they want to know how you're doing. So what can you do to wrap up? Pretty quickly here, take control of your education, get to know your professors, go to those office hours, meet other students, get involved in groups, study groups, fun groups, be assertive, all right? Create a support system, seek out help. Your college might have peer mentors. They might have an RA if you live on campus. You will have an RA if you live on campus, or even your admission counselor, somebody that you can turn to who can direct you in the right direction. As I mentioned, all those resources that you're paying for, tutoring, library, health, counseling, fitness center, use them. That's why they're there. That's why you're paying the big bucks. Take control of your time. So plan ahead. Procrastination is a big, big deal. But make sure you have time for those things. So if you want to go to that social event on Friday night, but you have a big paper due Monday morning, like just plan ahead. And we'll talk more about that in time management. And push yourself a little bit too. Try to enroll in a different class that challenges you, that you might, be a different topic you are interested in. Go for it, right? That makes the whole college experience more exciting as well. Make those thoughtful decisions. So don't just take a course to satisfy a requirement. Try to find something that's really interesting. So I have to take a history class. Well, find a history that is going to engage you. And don't drop a course too quickly. You can really get behind that way. So make sure you utilize all those supports and see, is it my study habits? Is it my time management? Why am I not talking to the professor? Or why am I struggling? Because again, dropping the class, and depending on when you drop it, could affect financial aid. It could affect your graduation date. So really be aware of that. And then, as hard as it may be, try to think beyond the moment. So set goals for the semester, the year, and your whole college career, and even beyond. And that will help keep you on track when, you might be unsure of what to do next. And so I hope that helped. Definitely let me know if you have any questions, and stay tuned for other senior sessions in this Life After Hersey Senior Session series. Thank you.